find me in the spot where the floppies be. Till I give it a read, keep it crisp in the sleeve. Every Tuesday night feels like Christmas Eve. Living between Wednesdays.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and I'm joined once again by Rey Garza, and we're going to talk about their new graphic novel, Tank McGreggor. Ray, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, man. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's good to have you back. And do me a favor, Ray, just like last time, for the folks who maybe didn't see that interview and haven't come across you yet, who is Rey Garza?
Rey Garza, the one and only Rey Garza. That's a very deep question. So I am the creator of Tank McGreggor, which is my comic book character. Last time I was on your show, we talked about Tank McGreggor and the Mechanical Menace, which was my first book ever featuring the character. And now we're here to talk about Tank McGreggor and the Cosmic Colossus, which is book number 2 in the series. I just finished it a few months ago, and well, I mean, it's kind of like debatable when it was actually finished, but we have a Kickstarter out right now, so I'm happy to be bringing it into people's purview now. So I'm really excited about that.
Good. And one thing, I do like to mention, because I think it's impressive, is like you said, this is your second comic, but it's not just like a comic book. It's not a floppy. It is a whole-on graphic novel. I appreciate the print may vary a little bit, but the digital copy is this one is 179 pages. So it's basically nearly 8 or 9 comics in one, if each comic is about 24 pages.
That's a pretty good math right there. It is 8 chapters, so it basically is like 8 different issues into one. It didn't occur to me to release them as issues, then have this be the collected works. I just always thought it's just going to be a book, and again, it was more about I didn't set out to make a book that was 170. It's actually 175 pages. But the other couple pages are more just variant covers and a couple of bonus extras.
Okay.
So I didn't really intend to make a book that was 175 pages. But when you're doing the story, I just kind of let it reach its organic conclusion and its natural conclusion. So every scene has a purpose, and every character has their purpose, and everyone's just going through their journey. And I didn't want to end it before it had to, or even have it drag out longer than it had to. 175 pages was exactly what the characters needed for their journey to be organically reach a point of climax and a point of ending.
I love it. Do you find that if you have to inorganically end something when you're writing, or rather, I guess in your writing process, if something happens and I have to go out and leave and do whatever, does that screw you up because you just want to organically let it come to a conclusion, but sometimes life won't let it?
Well, I'm well aware that I say organically, but I'm well aware that I have the ultimate say in what happens, and I'm really guiding them. But yeah, it is sort of a balance and a struggle to know where you wanted to go. So I wanted to get there organically, but I know where I want it to go. I know where it's going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a balance of trying to get there with stuff that makes sense for the characters and where they are in the space. But at the same time, I have to nudge them along. And sometimes I realize I've written myself to corners, or I've written entire chapters that don't make sense unless I add something which I'm not quite figuring out yet. From this book, I had to I had deleted scenes. I flat out have 10-page chunks that I had to just kind of remove, and they're just there, and they're completely finished, but I had to remove because it was messing with the flow of where things had to go, So yeah, it's a careful balance, but that's the fun part, right?
That is, and good on you to be able to know it, to edit it, and not fight to keep those pages, just to realize that and go, I have to let these go. Because I can imagine that's a lot of work, 10 pages, and you both write and draw all of it. That's a hell of a lot of work, and then to let that go, maybe you'll reuse it later, do something with it, but yeah. So,
I did scavenge some of the pages. Well, like one page I reused for a different, like the intro of a different chapter. So it wasn't completely lost. But now it's like, oh no, I got to come up with a new page if I ever use those again.
yeah.
But yeah, it was just sort of like a setting the scene. And it's like, oh, this is a really cool setting the scene for this chapter. But I can just as easily put it over here and it sets the scene for this new one. You know what I mean? So it wasn't a complete loss, but it is hard to kill your darlings, as they say.
Yeah, really. So I did want to make sure we mentioned fairly early on, you are, of course, the artist and writer on Tank McGreggor, for both of them, and now for Cosmic Colossus. For the folks out there who've maybe never read the first one, can you explain who Tank McGreggor is, what's going on in his life when we meet him in Chapter 1, and if people will be able to just pick up number 2 here without having read the first one?
Yeah, they absolutely can. I mean, I've designed them in a way that each book is its own separate, self-contained adventure. You don't have to have read part 1 to enjoy part 2. And whilst I do reference part 1 and a couple of times in part 2, it's never in a way that like, oh, I'm lost because I don't know what I'm talking about. It's more about like, oh, there's a whole backstory that I don't know about. It's more like to pique interest, like, oh, that sounds interesting. I wonder what that's about. I want to read the first one now to see what that means or what they're talking about. But it's in no way like inhibits the storytelling of this one. And yeah, so Tank McGregor is just like this no-nonsense, badass bounty hunter from outer space. He is sort of like the amalgamation of all these 80s and 90s action heroes that I used to love growing up. Your Van Dammes, your Arnold Schwarzeneggers, Stallones, to a lesser extent, Steven Seagal, but because I never really liked him, but he was part of that whole zeitgeist of action heroes. And he's all of them just combined into this one personality of like, shoot first, ask questions later. And it always have like a quirky one-liner. I mean, a quippy one-liner. And it's all that just meshed into this fever dream of a science fiction action comedy adventure. I try to take the piss out of all those action tropes. So while they're inspired by those things, I'm not trying to make something that's exactly that. I'm trying to kind of make fun of it and flip it on its head. The one-liners he says are ridiculous to the point where like it's funny, but it's like it doesn't make it. Is that he thinks he's cool, but no one else thinks he's cool.
Yeah. That's distinctly. I remember when I read the first one, just the amount of one-liners that were just like you said, they're nonsensical, but they feel cool, and especially to him saying them while he's blowing up some alien's head with a shot. I'm glad to hear that's carried over. How has your I suppose your sense of humor evolved from the first one to this one, and yeah, like what kind of quips?
Maybe it's devolved. Actually, I'm afraid. I don't know if it's evolved per se, but no, absolutely. Whereas the first one, it was all about just like the joke, and I'm just gonna focus on like what's the joke for this scene, well, that's the joke for that scene. Now I feel like I did a better job of like very much so balancing it out better with the story and the storytelling. And now it's not about servicing the jokes; it's about servicing the story. But still being able to maintain that like classic Tank McGregor voice, which became hard at some point because I'm writing it and drawing it and putting in these jokes, and I started self-doubting, thinking like, is this really like a Tank McGregor joke? Is this as funny as the first one? Am I losing like the sort of like spirit of it? Because at some points it would get like either too heavy or too science fiction or too highbrow, and I have to like dial it back. It's like, well, Tank McGregor isn't supposed to be this serious or this existential. It's supposed to be those things, but I have to kind of inject a little bit of lightheartedness into it, So yeah, I don't know if it's evolved. I think it's pretty much my art has evolved for sure, but the style of writing and the jokes are still just 100% me and my sense of humor.
I love it. In what kind of I'm wondering check do you have in place for that? Like when you're writing it, to keep it consistent, was there anything that you were using as sort of a yardstick, so to speak, when it came to, oh, this is too dark, or was it just it felt not quite right for you?
It felt not quite right. Showing the first book to different people and doing shows like one and having people like you read it and tell me what resonated most with them from the first book and what they laughed most at was a good guiding principle. So I'll be writing and think like, would those guys find this funny? You know, would that audience think this is in the same spirit, or are they going to read it? I don't have a lot of fantasies of like people reading it and going like, well, okay, this is not like the first one, or I haven't laughed once, or whatever, you know. So that really guided me to like, all right, it was a good barometer for like weighing in how funny I should be at certain times and how more serious I should be. So I definitely, and it also helps when I write and I have pages done, leave them alone for like 2 weeks and then come back to them, and I can more clearly see what works and what doesn't work. Things that I thought were hilarious no longer read as funny, you know, and things that I didn't see before that could be funny, I add to it, you know. So it's the whole thing for 2.5 years is just a process of iterating on what's already there. And I mean, I didn't stop writing it, even though I had pages completed and the whole thing written. I didn't stop writing and rewriting up until, I want to say, 2 days before I sent it out to the printers.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just have to keep, I mean, for me, myself, I just have to keep doing that because I always find something that could be better, could be better, could be better. And at one point, you just have to go like, okay, I'm done. I can't keep doing it. It's as good as I'm going to find it, you know?
Yeah,
and then you put it out into the world and people read it and you realize that a lot of your fears were unfounded. People find it funny, people find it charming or whatever, and they still like it. And so I feel like I've kept the spirit of the first one alive in the second one, even though it's a lot bigger, a lot grander, a lot more epic, way more locations, way more locales, you know, and actually a lot heavier themes than the first one, even though the first one had pretty heavy themes, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the first adventure had McGregor tracking down a rogue, I don't want to say robot,
Next robot, yeah.
yeah, a mechanical life form. It was figuring itself out and seeming very interesting and cool, but of course he's got to track this thing down. What does he find himself up to in Cosmic Colossus? Again, let's keep it to chapter 1 maybe, or grand strokes, because I don't want to give any spoilers because your stuff is so good.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I can give you the broad strokes without spoiling too much, and it goes beyond chapter 1 a little bit, but sure. In chapter 1, we find Tank McGreggor in a very different place than he was in book 1. You know, because of the events of book 1, where I don't care if it's a spoiler at this point, but like in book 1, he makes a decision that at the beginning of book 2, you see the consequences of it, and the consequences were that he gets basically kicked out of the League of Bounty Hunters. And bounty hunting was his whole life, you know, that was his identity. So he's a little more down, he's more depressed, he's a little more disheveled, you know, he's got a big bushy beard, he's drunk in some alleyway, he doesn't know what to do with his life. And at that point, in his lowest point, he basically gets sought out by a new client, which turns out to be part of a race of religious beings from a nearby comet who just recently lost their god. So they worship a literal god, and someone stole that god from them. So they hire him because he's a very famous bounty hunter. They hire him to go track down the god. So it basically becomes about like Tank McGregor in the search for God, but just kind of ridiculous because I wouldn't think I'd jumped that shark yet. But it isn't as religious as it sounds. You know, to him it's just a job, and he wants to do it too because he thinks if I do this, I could get back into the League of Bounty Hunters. You know.
Yeah.
So whereas for this race of people, it is their whole belief system. For him, it's just another job. You know, and those two worlds clash. The world of like science fiction and religion bump heads, you know, and what is science fiction, what is religion, you know, it just kind of answers. I don't answer all those questions, but I ask all those questions, you know.
Yeah, that's right up your alley, right? That's awesome. I guess given McGregor's nonchalance about anything, I would say serious, because he's much more, you know, I want to get paid, I want to be able to eat, fix my ship, keep on moving. in this story, when he comes up to highly religious people that are, reliant on him to literally bring their God back to them, I'm really curious, what kind of reaction does he have to them?
Well, actually, I could read you a little bit if I can find it real quick, because that exact scene is something that I kind of address, which is sort of like, well, I have a scene where the person who's hiring him is explaining their culture to them,
Oh God.
and it's explaining how like basically how they're all cut out from society. They keep to themselves. They have a high priestess, and anybody who publishes heretical texts that go against the word of their god are disbanded, are executed. And because they're so cut out from the world, they don't have things like texts from other worlds, and they don't have television, they don't have radio. And she goes on this giant diatribe of explaining their entire culture. And at the end of it, he goes, "So no TV, huh?" So that's basically all he heard. So, and that's all he really cares about. So it is very much like he doesn't care about this whole thing she's explaining to him. He just heard like, "Oh, no TV, that's a bummer. Anyway, when are you going to pay me to track down? Or what's the job?"
I love it. Ray, thank you for that. Like that's such deadpan humor, nearly slapstick. Like you could take this very serious, and I'm glad, as we sort of discussed earlier, you're not censoring it, but you're dialing it in to be Tank McGreggor properly. Because I think there's definitely a place for that kind of humor, and it just makes it easier to sort of take in and enjoy. Right? It doesn't have to be a complex theological argument. It can just be a fun comic book with a lot of quips along the way.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier it was about 2.5 years to complete this book, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So a year ago is when we did our interview, give or take. And that was for number 1. So you had number 2 about halfway done then. What, like you said, your art has evolved. I'm really curious when it comes to your process. What's changed from book 1 to book 2, or even frankly from page 1 of book 2 to page 175?
Well, definitely when I was making book 1, I definitely lacked a lot of confidence in my art skills, even though I did know that I could draw and I liked drawing. I kind of had convinced myself that I couldn't do like landscapes and things like that.
Oh.
So I kept it as simple as I could. Once book 1 came out, I realized like, no, I'm actually fairly decent at these things. I'm going to now see how much I can push myself to make more. And also seeing my drawings matched with the colors of my colorist, Michael Woods, I saw what he could do. Yeah, what he could do with my drawings, and what he did with things that I consider really simple. He did some incredible things. So then I started thinking in that way. When I was drawing, they're like, "Ooh, this is gonna look tight once he gets a hold of it." So I would like draw with his colors in mind, And I would just keep trying to push myself to the things that I would say like, "Oh, that's gonna be a pain to draw." Now I'd be like, I'm gonna make something that's gonna be you're gonna be able to see in the page and think that is a pain to draw. Again, it's not a huge spoiler because it's out of context, but like I wanted to draw a battle scene, and I'm reminded of like the battle scenes that Frank Miller drew for 300, which was just like giant spreads and a lot of people, and I just wanted to do something like that. So it's just like, I don't know how well you can see it, but I mean, it's just like a whole mess.
My God!
I think it's blurry, but yeah, like
I'll be able to bring it in from the PDF you sent me. Oh my God!
Excellent. Yeah, it's just like a 2-page spread of just like a battle scene, and I wanted to like have so many people just kind of like destroying each other, and I wanted to input that like classic Tank McGreggor humor. Like there's this huge battle, and if you look closely, somewhere in there, it's a guy just like holding up his iPhone and like taking pictures. You see like stuff like that, So and when I drew that, every time I draw a page and I send it out to my colorist, I explain to him like, "Hey, so this bit is this is that." I give him a lot of direction, like a lot of it. Maybe I don't know, an annoying amount. I've never asked him about it. But I sent him those 2 pages, and I just wrote, "I'm sorry," and I just gave it to him. But he like totally nailed it. Like he completely understood the assignment and he like totally nailed what he had to do, and he did an amazing job.
That's awesome. I think that is like Ray, you're so funny. And I think that's hilarious. Just send him I'm sorry. One thing I did want to ask, so in the last book, the first book, you had a lot of scenes with sometimes up to 4 people, not a ton of them with like large groups, and then you did a fair bit of vehicles and interiors of vehicles like McGregor's ship. In this book, I've noticed when I've glanced through it, yeah, you do have more scenes with more people. There's more vehicles now. I gotta ask the classic like con question, which is, which do you dislike drawing more now, vehicles or crowds?
Women.
Oh, specifically?
No, I just find like the female form to be a very hard thing to draw and to get right. But no, to answer your question, I guess I dislike drawing crowds more. I find crowds to be very, like with a vehicle, especially a science fiction vehicle, you can kind of throw stuff at it and just, as long as it looks nice, it doesn't have to have, I mean, for me at least, any practical use, just look really cool. For crowds, you have to not only make sure they don't like interfere with each other in the art and make sure it doesn't just look like a jumbled mess, but you got to keep it all together in your head. But you have to, like, especially in an alien world, you got to create individual aliens and a whole bunch of different races that are all interacting together. And after the first and second one, you realize I'm just repeating them. Like I need to do something else, something crazier. So it's a little harder for me, at least, to do crowds than vehicles.
Fair, good point. I like that. It's one thing that in to the folks out there, I'm sure if you go to a con and you catch a sketch duel, usually every other sketch duel that question comes out just because people are curious, especially newer artists. One thing I did want to ask, and it like specifically because I remember in a previous interview with, not from me, mind you, a interview that exists, someone interviewed Jeff Lemire about how he, or not Jeff Lemire, Jim Lee, about how he got into DC and how he got getting on those books. And one of the things he drew was Cyborg to like the nth degree of detail. Like it was insanely detailed, all the mechanical stuff. And about half of your characters, I think, are in some way cybernetic, whether they're fully cyborgs, someone with a mechanical arm or a leg, some sort of enhancement to them. How do you find drawing the mechanical versus the organic? And what kind of role does that take in your world?
The difficult thing for me is that when you draw the mechanical, you not only have to know it in a 3-dimensional format, because every angle you have to know where each wire goes or whatever kind of mechanical being it is, you know, you have to match it every single time. Because at least to the artist, to me, I would totally notice when something's completely different from one panel to the next. So if you go too detailed, I can be really proud of a panel, but then get really like demoralized when I realize I have to do it again for every single panel, you know? So my style is I try to keep it a little simpler. I am evolving my art in a way that it doesn't matter to me anymore. I like doing more detail and I don't mind doing it over and over and over and over again, which is why book 2 has much better art, I feel, than the first one in terms of like how I grew as an artist. But yeah, drawing people to me is a lot more simple because the human body is, you know, it's already ingrained in my head what that's supposed to look like. And I don't forget where his scar is if I add a scar to him or something, you know. But a robot or some sort of alien being, it has to come 100% from my imagination, and that kind of makes it hard, especially if I don't have some sort of like initial art, concept art, or character pieces or character Bible to draw from.
Oh, interesting. Do you have actually a character Bible? I'm really curious because you have a number of characters that are some of them, like McGregor and his partner, fairly complex backgrounds. Have you made like a character Bible?
I haven't, and that's a huge regret of mine. I know I need to do
Really?
one,
Okay.
and if I do a third one, I'm gonna do a character Bible. And in fact, I'm working on a new thing that's not Tank McGregor right now. And the first
Ooh.
thing I did was I started doing a character Bible, because Tank McGregor, I didn't do one, and it ultimately like made things a lot harder in the long run,
Hmm.
because I would decide way into the book that, like, you know what, it's better if she has this instead of that. Now I got to go and change every single one, you know, every single
Oh,
drawing of her. Tank McGregor one, I decided I didn't like his helmet more than halfway through. So then I went back and I changed his helmet at every single frame, you know? So all that came about because I didn't have a set vision to begin with, a character Bible.
interesting.
And in Tank McGregor 2, it got even more annoying because I didn't have a character Bible. So a lot of the characters you see in there, the first time you see them, is me drawing them for the first time
Yeah.
and just figuring them out. You know, it's like, okay, that, you know, whatever she appears, that's what she's going to look like. Boom, you know. And every now and then I'll like, oh, you know what, I'm going to add this to her. I'm going to do something else to her. But for the most part, that's it. You know, the only character that changed drastically was, and you haven't gotten to her yet because she's not in the first chapter, but the queen and the high priestess of the Society of Religious Beings was a very different design
No.
when I drew her, and I had her drawn a certain way for the longest time. And then after a while, I realized, like, just looking at it again, I was like, I can do a lot better than that. You know, she looks way too stiff. She looks like she's not a real thing. You know, I want her to be more like sexy, more dynamic. And I just kind of like changed her completely. And I wish I had a side to side of like, maybe I do that at some point in behind the scenes, show side to side what she was and what she became. But yeah, it changed a lot.
And for the folks out there watching, I want to clarify, what medium do you work in when you're drawing?
I work digitally, so I use software you called Studio Pro to draw all
Oh.
my things. Yeah, I wish I were a better artist to where I can draw analog and just like pump it out, but I'm so used to my control Command Z, you know, to
Yeah.
like delete stuff. So I'm way too used to that, and it's too much of a crutch for me at this point to switch. I can draw analog, yeah, sure, but when I'm doing a comic where I have to dedicate a whole hour to something, I work faster if I don't have to erase.
Oh, 100%. That's no point of contention on there for me. Command Z is, as long as you don't let it become your sort of your vice, I think it's perfectly fine, and a lot of people do it.
Yes.
So, important question, because we're like 28, 30, or almost 30 minutes in here. This is a Kickstarter campaign. So, how can folks get the book? And we'll start there. So, how do they get it? And what do they get with it?
So if you guys go to the Kickstarter for Tank McGregor and the Cosmic Colossus right now, you will find Tank McGregor and the Cosmic Colossus in its physical form and digital form. You could also opt to get the first book if you missed out. That's another reward tier. You can get the second book along with the first book. Along with that, you could also get different tiers where we reward you with a bunch of other books from the LKC catalog. You know, we have a tier that is all Texas creators. So we have Bigfoot and Us Karate in there, you know, from Dan Price, and a couple of others that escape me right now. But aside from that, we also have another tier for like LKC digital starter pack, a large array of books from lesser known comics in their digital form. You get Narita, Yuriko, Tights, Tank McGregor as well, Chiasm, a whole bunch of different books. You can also have a tier at Chiasm, exactly right there. There's also a tier in there for donating books to children's hospitals. The author of Chiasm, Doug Knight, I was about to call him Doug Jones for some reason.
I do
Doug
that
Knight.
too. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Okay, good, excellent. Yeah. So Doug Knight created this amazing book called Super Wicked White Cell Squad, and with the intent of putting it in children's hands at children's hospitals. So there's a tier to do that, you know, if you're feeling altruistic. I hope I used that word correctly.
Yeah, totally.
Perfect. And yeah, so you can find it there. And if you don't want to have to look up Kickstarter and search Cosmic Colossus and not find that it's not coming out, what's going on, you can just go to my Instagram at Tank McGregor Comic, and click the link in the bio, and you'll find it right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
I love it. And I guess for the folks out there who say they've listened to us talk and they're like, I'm in, I want this comic. I guess I'll say the digital, because that's probably less expensive, I imagine. So what would just the second volume run somebody if they only wanted digital? And if they wanted both of them, what would it run them?
So if they want the digital only copy, they can get so for a mere donation of $10, I believe. I am looking at it right now. Yes. So for $10, they can get the digital version of Tank McGreggor and the Cosmic Colossus. For $20, they get the physical version, this that I'm holding up right now. You get the physical version of the book along with its digital counterpart. For $30, you can get the physical version, but the Rhys Jenkins variant, which is a beautiful cover that Rhys Jenkins did for me. And it just really, I mean, if you know Rhys Jenkins, you follow him, see his art, you see what an amazing artist he is, and his variant cover is really amazing. I mean, he's got several backers for it right now as well, so he's really happy with that.
Nice.
For $38, you can get both books, the first book and the second book in the series, and then it goes up from there. The following tier after that is $53, and there you get the first book, the second book, along with some really cool art prints that are just like sort of mini posters for the world of Tank McGreggor, and they're really cool. They all have like, they're basically like pinups from like the 1940s, but they, instead of like sexy girls, they have like sexy robots and like sexy aliens. So that's really cool. After that, you can either pledge $70 for the LKC digital starter pack, which includes books like Tank McGreggor, Either Them or Us, Tights, Yuriko, It's a Horror Show, Chiasm, Bigfoot Nosferatu, Death Wish, all those amazing books. And then it just keeps going from there. Higher tiers are just different levels of lesser known comic books, digital and physical.
Awesome. And so just to clarify, so for the digital covers, or for the digital for the digital copies of Tank McGreggor 1 and 2, you said it was $35, correct?
You actually get digital and physical.
Oh,
for whole books. Yeah. If you want just the digital, I mean, you can get the digital for Cosmic Colossus, which is the second book, for just $10. For $38, you get both books, the first and the second, and you get their digital counterparts. So it's $38 for both books in their entirety.
And as a reminder, that is not, again, like a comic book. That is a graphic novel, because number 2, it's 175 pages. Number 1, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's 120?
128.
Yeah. Like altogether, you're talking digitally, like $10 gets you 300, or 35 gets you the digital plus the physical 2 graphic novels. Like, that's huge, because well, heck, up here in Canada, it's about $20 for a graphic novel. So I imagine it's about 15 in the States. So you're breaking even, basically, getting awesome books. What I do like to ask is, I find the LKC lesser known comics, by the way. So for the folks out there, LKC lesser known comics, you guys are a comic collective based in Texas, basically. They've got folks.
We're based all over the country. Yeah, we have a lot of people in Texas, but it's based all over the country. We're not based in Texas. Mark Bernal, the owner, is, I believe, in. Oh my God, he's gonna kill me if I don't remember. I believe he's in Washington.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Like, I know Doug, the creator of Chiasm. He lives like 20 minutes from me, which is wild. Yeah, it's really cool. So yeah, like the whole company's everywhere. Just a lot of you guys are, for some reason, from Texas. I totally lost my question. Oh well, it'll come back. I'm
sorry, I interrupted you.
It's all good. If it's important, it'll come back.
You were saying that where LKC is a community of comic creators.
Yeah, that's lesser known comics. Go check out the website. And yeah, clearly you've got, like, for $70, you've got a tier where you get a whole whack of comics that range everything from science fiction, like yourself, Nerida is like fantasy. Yuriko's horror about vampires. Tights is not quite superheroes, kind of surreal drama, I guess. Chiasm is definitely like superheroes and superpowers and stuff. So there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. I guess, you know what I'll ask, Ray, is how have you found working with LKC or working as a part of LKC over the last year and a bit?
It's been great. I mean, when I first joined, Mark was very transparent and clear as to what LKC was and what it wasn't. And he said, if you're cool with that, we'd love to have you come on board. And I mean, I came on board, and really he allows artists and creators to just do their thing, be themselves. He doesn't really put like strict deadlines on anything or have any like crazy, like, hey, you know, your plots could be better here. They're like, he has no input in, I mean, he has suggestions and gladly so people take him, and he knows a lot about putting out a comic. So I am constantly asking him for advice on what should I do here, what should I do there. But in terms of the creativity, it's very refreshing and very freeing for an artist to be able to do what they want. And for me in particular, what I get from it is a much bigger megaphone per se. You know, I could be making Tank McGreggor, but in my meager following of people that I had when I first started, no one was going to see it besides my family, you know. And my following has grown because of LKC and their outreach for their fans, you know. So yeah, it's been great. I love it. I don't see myself anywhere else at the moment. I mean,
Nice.
I'm very happy.
That's fantastic to hear. I am curious, are you allowed to talk about the other thing you're working on?
It's not that I'm not allowed. I'm allowed to talk about it, but it's so early in development that it's one of those things where, like, to talk about it would be to make it real, and then I have to hear it coming out of my mouth, and maybe I don't like it, or maybe I don't like your face when I'm telling it to you, you know, and that turns me off from it. I will say that I've been playing a lot of Dark Souls.
Oh.
And a lot of like From Software games like Elden Ring, and I love the entire lore behind all that, the fantasy setting. And on the other side of that coin, my other favorite game that I play all the time is Destiny 2, which is more science fiction fantasy. So I'm trying to find a way that I can take everything I love from the universes of those two things and try to create something that is just completely my own.
I dig it. And is this, again, you don't have to answer this one, but is it again going to be completely written and drawn by yourself? Or are you going to grab another artist?
No, it's going to be completely written and drawn by myself. Yeah. I mean, that's the fun part, man. Which is why it's hard to like commit to it, because like I know if I commit to something, it's going to be another year and a half of my life. So it's like I got to be very meticulous as to what I choose to be my next project. I should be better about like working on several things at once, but I'm just not. If I go into something, I want to do that. And again, you know me, like I have to finish it or let the story like unfold organically. So I don't know how long it would take. I don't know how long it would be, you know. Although I did learn from the experience of making Cosmic Colossus that I no longer wanted to just kind of be open-ended. So I'm going to try to make it, I mean, open-ended in terms of like where it's going, and I'm just going to let it flow. So I'm trying to be a little more, I'm going to keep it at 22 pages for the first issue.
Okay.
And I'm going to just work on that. And then I'm going to do another 22 pages and just treat it like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it gives me a little more structure, and maybe I can release individual issues as opposed to wait 3 years and release a whole book. You know?
Absolutely. I think for me personally, and I'm sure there will be a lot of people out there that will agree, it'll make it easier on the fans, because like I said, I love your sense of humor. Your books are quirky and interesting, and getting to know McGregor and the weird stuff he gets himself into. Getting a whole graphic novel of that is fantastic, and you could sit there and really bite into it. But I think, getting whatever you do next, whatever it might be, getting, here's a chapter. Here's a chapter. Every couple of months, it'll keep us satiated better.
Right, yeah.
And hopefully for you, I don't know, maybe it'll give you like a sense of more immediate not feedback.
Gratification.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's, oh, we like this book, keep going. Instead of, let
Yeah.
me make this huge thing and then give it to you.
Or like, oh, this is shit, you should stop.
I highly doubt that. I am actually interested to see your take on fantasy. If you do that. Because...
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning to.
Yeah, because I don't... One thing that I like, and I want to stress for people who are out there listening, or watching, I should say, Tank McGreggor is sci-fi. Absolutely, hands down, no questions asked. You're in space, there's aliens and robots and all this stuff. But, Ray, you've never written it to use the genre as a crutch. Tank McGregor would still be cool if he was in 1980s Philadelphia. He would still be cool if he was in the fields of Rohan, fighting orcs alongside Aragorn or something. The character is what makes him interesting. You're just playing in that setting. So, like I said, I'm interested to see what you do with fantasy when you get there. Take your time. Do your thing.
Thank you.
But yeah, it'll be cool. Then I guess we've covered sort of the book, how people can get it, which is great. Again, Kickstarter links down below, or go check out Ray's social media. He'll have the links right there. In fact, go check out Ray's social media anyway. I guess given your love of quips and how many you injected into the first one, and how big the second one is, when you're writing, because it is quite large, when you're writing them all, did you come up with the joke itself or the quip and then find a way to put it in, or did it evolve naturally out of the events happening in the story?
Yes, both. Because a lot of times I do have the story in my head and I know where I want to take it, and as I'm writing, it just goes naturally, like, oh, in real life, I would say something here. I in real life use humor a lot as a defense mechanism. When I'm nervous or when it's awkward or whatever, I just like say stupid shit. So I kind of put myself in a situation where, like, oh, I would say something like this here. And that's where a lot of the jokes come from. But on the other side of that is, yeah, a lot of times I come up with something that I think will be really funny joke. And I think it'll be even funnier if I spend 4 pages setting it up, there's a point in the book where Tank McGregor meets up with a supercomputer, which is a planet-sized supercomputer, which is basically a mechanical super god, who knows everything, and they have to go visit it to get some questions answered. And he arrives there, and I thought it would be really funny if they spent like 2 or 3 pages just going like, hang on, but where do I know you from? Oh, I'm Cheryl's cousin from twice removed from the asteroid. Oh, you're the guy who tries to sell me magazine subscriptions. Yeah. And it just goes on for that. And I'm drawing it. I'm drawing like the 3rd page of this, like back and forth. And it's like, man, this is going nowhere, but it's hilarious. So that joke happened that way. So it's both. Sometimes I'll think of the joke first and work around it and really like find a way to put it in there. And other times it just kind of happens naturally. A lot of times they come out after I finish the entire book. I finished the entire story. I told you I've been editing it and re-editing it, and keep writing it up to the very last day that I have to publish it. And as I'm reading it, I realize something's missing here, something's missing there, or like new jokes come to mind, new quips, new ideas that I insert. And sometimes that kind of messes the whole dynamic. If I insert something, I have to like move everything to fit that. And it sounds like a really chaotic and not elegant way of writing, but it ends up being elegant. I mean, that's, to me, where the fun comes in, to make it elegant and to make it seem like it was there, the plan all along, to have it there.
It's interesting. Like one thing that I enjoy. So your art style is, and again, I lack the education and the language to convey this in a really flowery way, but I would call your art style fairly simple. So your character, like McGregor's character design itself, is fairly simple, right? You've got dude, he's got a blue helmet with a big visor on. In chapter 1, he's got this big bushy beard, brown jacket, blue shirt, pants, boots, gun. Very simple design. His jacket doesn't have like a bunch of weird stuff all over it. It's just a jacket. A lot of your characters are simple like that, and I find probably from an art perspective, being able to just draw that, you know, over and over and over again is probably easier than if he had some crazy design. What I find interesting though is with an art style like that, my brain goes to the idea of like the economy of line, where in comics, like guys like Darwin Cook and Jack Kirby, every line that they have has a purpose, and their art is as stripped down as it can be while still conveying the magnitude of whatever they're drawing. Where I'm going with this is I feel like your art style fits that, but you very much don't, at least in from what I'm understanding, I don't think you care really about it, because for you the writing and the humor come first. Like you said, you spent 3 pages on a back and forth because it's funny, and it is, but like it's an odd juxtaposition, I guess. So just to ask, do you care about the economy of line, and at what point would you stop drawing something because it's not worth it, so to speak?
I mean, I'd be lying if I told you that I didn't wish that I could draw like Jim Lee or Spawn creator,
Todd McFarlane.
Forget his name. Todd McFarlane. Yeah, like I want to be able to draw with that level of detail and insanity and creativity. And if I could do that, I would. But I, especially in the first one, didn't feel like my drawings were good enough, so I had to overcompensate with a great story, which I know I'm a fairly competent storyteller. It's something that I'm confident in, that I can turn out a fairly good story if given enough time. So that's where that came about in book 1. In book 2, I had better confidence in my drawings, so I definitely upped the ante in terms of like detail and scenarios and all that stuff. Even though Tank, I felt I reached a really good, like, sort of iconic balance with him, so I kept them almost identical. You know, like the simplicity, as you put it, was there in the first one, so I can repeat it over and over, and it's there in the second one because that, to me now, that's Tank McGregor. That's what he wears. That's what he is. So now a lot of the characters around him somewhat have a lot more detail, but he stays the same. So I do care, but not to the point where it affects me. And I mean, if I cared enough, I would probably never release a book, because I'd be like, this is not good enough. This is not good enough. This is not good enough. So I do care about it, but I know when to like release something. If that makes any sense. I know where to stop and where to compensate with better writing. That makes it sound like I think my art is bad. I don't think my art is bad. But you know what I mean.
It sounds like you know when your art is done.
Yeah.
Because
yes, exactly. I know when if I keep adding to them, when it would be too much and would be too busy. And I like the simplicity that I am able to keep it in. I mean, one of my first inspirations was Mike Mignola, and his drawings in Hellboy are far from simple, but if you dissect them, they really are so simple, you know, and there's not a lot going on, but it's so deceptively simple. And that's what I wanted to go for. You know, it's like, if he can do it like that way, I'm sure I can do it also.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. Wow. We have plowed through. Awesome.
Yeah.
So
I love your questions, man. They're awesome questions.
Thank you.
You got me thinking. Oh,
good. I like that part. Then, you know, I do want to ask, is there anything else that maybe I've not touched on that you want to make sure that people know?
I think you've done a very good job of touching everything. No, yeah, I mean, Tank McGregor and the Cosmic Colossus, you know, it's part 2. I set out to make a much grander, epic adventure. I sometimes tell people that, like, oh, this might be my Chronicles of Riddick, you know, because I kind of like overstepped my bounds in terms of like what I could do, I think. I mean, I went to 175 pages. I went to multiple planets. I did multiple ideas. I went philosophical at some point. I tried to insert a whole bunch of ideas that were interesting to me, and while still keeping the same kind of humor. I mean, the cover itself, I believe, is like very indicative of it. I mean, it's very epic and cool, but like there's a guy with a yo-yo, on the side. Like it's just like little shit like that like I want people to be able to like see these big epic scenes and notice like tiny things and, oh wow, that's really funny, or like that doesn't seem like it belongs. I had a blast creating logos and billboards, all around the universe. I have references to like Frasier, because Frasier is really funny to me, so it's like, but they're so hidden, and like I don't think anybody's really caught it yet, or maybe they caught it and they don't think it's funny. I don't know, but no one's mentioned it to me so far. I'm curious to see if you catch it. I don't know. I think only a person who likes Frasier would notice it.
Okay.
But anyway, stuff like that, little bumper stickers that, like I mentioned, the big omnipotent mechanical god that knows everything, the planet-sized supercomputer. He's got bumper stickers that people have stuck on him throughout the years, that I find really funny. And I can't remember what they say, but they're like, my other brain is a Tesla or something like that. Probably not that, but like things like that, So
Yeah.
I want people to enjoy all the tiny little things that I inserted there, just for people who are willing to take time to look at a panel. And I just speed through the dialogue, And also, and I hope they find it funny and refreshing, and I hope they get something out of it. And I hope they are able to see that it's a ridiculous book, but some pretty serious questions that we might have in our everyday lives.
I love it. And absolutely, I hope hearing this, if nothing else, that people will go and search for things. I highly appreciate putting things like the bumper stickers, like signs, Easter eggs, stuff like that. So I get a kick out of that. That really makes me want to ask, have you drawn any, either yourself, loved ones, friends, family, have you drawn anyone into the book?
No, I haven't. No real people. No.
Okay.
Not at all. No, it's mostly little hidden Easter eggs having to do with inside jokes, maybe that my family might get that only my brother would get.
Oh, cool.
Especially in fact, the Frasier joke came directly from my brother. Because he was going on a Frasier binge. He's watched like Frasier in its entirety like 7 times at this point.
Wow.
And I'm like, hey, so I have a drawing where an alien is like waiting on a park bench for a bus, basically. What should the ad on the park bench say? And he just fucking came up with the ad that Frasier has on his park bench, and I'm like, that's fucking perfect, So like, things like that, that like are hilarious to me and to him, and some people might go like, I don't understand that. And I have some lines in there that are like, I don't know what that line is, but if you were to Google that line, you could see exactly what movie I got it from or where it came from. And I think that in itself is funny. Like the search for it is funny. The fact that like someone might go search for Google something that they don't understand is funny to me, even though I will never know if they did or not,
That's awesome. Well, I hope someone out there does. Who knows? Maybe someone out there will put together a Tank McGreggor references list and tweet about it, because that'd be so cool.
Yeah, totally.
Then we've got about 5 minutes left, Ray. Normally I would ask, basically the question I just asked you. I would also ask, what are you currently reading? To keep it, lesser known comics relevant and help your fellow coworkers, I guess we'll call it. What lesser known comics book would you recommend? If you can only recommend one, what would you think someone else should go and see? And the next time I interview someone, I'm going to ask them the same thing. So don't feel singled out or no hard feelings.
Dude, yeah, no, it's almost feelings are going to get hurt. My first one. No, I'm just kidding.
Love it.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I can answer that and single one out, like, to recommend one in particular, but I can tell you that the one I'm currently reading is Abducted by J. Red, which is this insane sort of like X-Files meets Twin Peaks, I think. I'm not sure. Like it's so bizarre and crazy, and just like you're reading it and you can't put it down, and it has all these weird highbrow ideas, incredible art, and it has to do with like aliens and governments and secret societies, secret governments, all that kind of stuff. So I'm reading that right now. So that one, that's what I'm going to say, Abducted by J. Red, which you can actually get in one of the Tank McGreggor tiers on Kickstarter. There we have a tier that is just for science fiction books, and that's one of them.
Oh, cool. Oh, so within the tiers, you've even broken it down like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. We have a tier for Texas creators, a tier for science fiction, a tier for digital, that kind of stuff.
Love it. So, folks, you've heard it here. Abducted. You can get it within the tiers for Tank McGreggor. So, absolutely, links down below. Then, yeah, you know what, Ray? That sort of brings us to the end of the interview. Absolutely, I want to say thank you so much again for taking the time to come on and talk with me about your new book.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. I had a blast last time. I had a blast this time.
Glad to hear.
And it's funny because like a lot of these podcasts that I'm like trying to get back on from last year, I remember the name, but I don't remember like the face of who it was. But you have a very distinctive icon.
Yes.
In your Wednesday night podcast, your beard. I'm like, I remember exactly who that is.
Perfect. That's the goal, the aim, the hat, and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear you're the first person to ever actually say that, and that's exactly why I did it. So thank you, sir. And yeah, for the folks at home, absolutely. Once more, first link down below is the Kickstarter link. Go click it, get whatever it is you're going to get in there, whether it's the entire Lesser Known Comics catalog, just Tank McGreggor, or some mish within. Like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you thought of Ray down below, and we'll see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it. True believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover tie-in. High flying, full color or black and white. Splash pages, flashbacks. Whet your appetite with new costumes, team ups, first loves, first appearances.